This is the third and final message in our series on transition. Today, the theme is new beginnings, which is not to say that we've thoroughly processed the ending or completed our time in the void. It might be helpful that we have touched on the entire process so that you're better prepared to navigate it. But by no means is that whole process done in a series of 3 weeks. It takes as long as it takes. Remember, 40 years, as long as it takes. Today's service is, of course, especially poignant because it's my last service here in Greensboro for a while, and that's kind of sad. At the same time, it's hopeful. And then we've welcomed these beautiful new members into the church the same day. And I think, God, isn't this a perfect metaphor for the way life is? This challenging mixed bag of sadness and joy, anxiety and excitement, fear and faith. What a wild, unpredictable, exhilarating ride it all is it not? My mentor, EJ, used to say to me, "You know, Catherine, you've got to learn to wear life like a cape resting lightly on your shoulders. You gotta be willing to move with the rhythm of the dance." Little did I know at the time what that would be like. But it's true, isn't it? The more we struggle with what is, the more we resist the flow of change, the more we dig in our heels and insist that we just don't like the way things are, well, the more painful life gets. So the task ahead is, first and foremost, for us to loosen our grip on the past and enter into the future with faith and an air of hopeful expectancy. I love that word, expectancy. It's one of my favorite words. We wonder, what great thing does the universe have in store for us next? What will be asked of us? Who must we become? How will we change? Thank God at times like these that you are a Unity student. Because as a Unity student, you know that whatever comes, it's all good because it's all God. And you know that the universe is benevolent, always has our good in mind. And these realizations help us to relax, and as they say on MSNBC, lean forward. Lean forward. Thoreau said, "I learned this at least, that if one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours." Do you hear this? It's the uncommon hours, not in the routine, that causes our dreams to be awakened and come true. If a transition has been fully experienced and accepted, the result is a new beginning that is ripe with the possibility of success and fulfillment. Like me, you may have begun to already get signs that foretell of this new beginning. I know that I've felt moments of excitement and optimism when new ideas and plans are just sort of flowing into me. I know that I've gained many new insights about myself and about my family dynamic, and about this church that are going to be extremely helpful to me in the future. And there's inside of me this subtle sense that something in my character and personality is shifting. It's like, I know, I couldn't describe it to you, but I know I'm not the same person that began this transition journey just 2 months ago. Robert Brummett, in Finding Yourself in Transition, stresses how important it is that we fully grieve an ending, change, or loss. He says that if we push past the discomfort and the pain, if we force ourselves to get on with business as usual and act as if nothing has happened, that our grief or sorrow, even our anger and fear, may get pushed underground And believe me, when they get pushed underground, they have a tendency to resurface at the most uncomfortable times. When the time comes for you to bring your new minister, when I begin working with my new congregation, we want our hearts and minds to be clear and open and receptive. And to do that, we've got to be willing to feel our feelings fully, even the ones that don't feel like really nice people ought to be feeling them. You know what I mean? You know those feelings. Once I depart here today, we're going to be cast into the wilderness experience, ready or not. We shouldn't be surprised if there's a sort of hollowness that maybe we're not quite feeling yet because we're all caught up in this excitement right here today. We may find ourselves, when we come to church, feeling a little lost. Things may feel a little strange. We may feel rather unsure of ourselves. For some, it may seem like a cold, snowy day. There we are, housebound, our routine disrupted, not sure what we ought to be doing. But at the same time, a cold, snowy day is rather lovely, isn't it? The whole world seems to slow down and become quiet. It seems like a natural time to turn inward and reflect on our lives, to sort of take stock of where we've been and where we are now. Brummett promises that if we will allow ourselves this time of personal soul connection, we may discover the jewel in the lotus, a priceless gift. We may discover a desire of the heart that has long been hidden from view in the hectic pace of everyday life. This inner longing, this heart's desire, is so essential because it is the voice of our higher self, pointing the way to a new beginning that is greater than the old life, a fuller expression of who we came here to be. If while we're in the void, we learn to pray in a whole new way, not so much asking for what we want, but from a place of humility in which we're truly receptive to guidance, where we want nothing more than to be the best expression of God we can possibly be. We ask to be changed at depth, and we ask that our feet be set firmly on the path we're meant to walk. Brummett describes a personal void experience when he found it necessary to let go of all his material attachments and surrender everything to God's will. He waited for weeks in the silence, he said, for God to tell him what next to do with his life. And finally, one day the answer came, and it came in the form of a question. And the question was this: well, Robert, what do you want to do? Immediately, he knew the answer to that question. He knew that for nearly a lifetime, his greatest desire had been to teach and write and counsel people using the spiritual truths that had been so life-changing for him. In that moment, he felt deep in his soul, without a doubt, that his heart's desire was God's will for him. Brummett says he had not let himself go there before because he had no idea how this new career was going to happen. But now, when divorce had turned his life upside down and all his former notions of how things had to be had been thrown out the window, he realized that there was absolutely nothing blocking the path ahead. And so he decided to step into his dream. He writes, "Once I had chosen the general direction I wanted to go and made the commitment to do whatever was needed to implement this choice, my life took on new energy and movement. From that moment on, I was led step by step to my current career as a teacher, a writer and a counselor at Unity Village, no less. I could never have hoped for so much. Indeed, it seems that God had had a better plan for my life than I could have conceived. I've noticed over the years that many of us have considerable confusion around this notion of God's will. People ask me all the time, how do I distinguish God's will from my will? Brummett has helped to make it clearer. Surrendering our personal will to God's will does not mean that we make no choices of our own. Think about the way an expert sailor surrenders to the wind. He would be a fool to struggle against the wind, but instead skillfully works with the wind to get where he wants to go. Surrendering to God's will is not about abdicating responsibility or being passive. It is living mindfully and skillfully in the heart. It's moving in the flow of a greater reality. You can feel that greater reality like the wind moving you forward. And it's cooperating fully with the direction your life is taking you. We need to have a clear vision of what we want. We need to do everything we can to move in that direction, and then what we need to do is surrender the results. We have this tendency to live in the future and try to figure out what's going to happen if I do this and what's going to happen if I do that. How's that been working for you? Doesn't seem to work for me too well. But this is what co-creation means. We make choices, we surrender the results. Reminds me of the story about a man who bought several acres of wasteland and within a year's time turned it into a thriving produce farm. The local minister stopped by to congratulate him and compliment him on his tremendous achievement. And the minister said, "Wondrous things surely happen when God and man work together." And the farmer said, "Amen to that. You should have seen this place when God was running it alone." There is action to be taken. In the coming month, you're going to be invited to participate in an appreciative inquiry process here. Through it, you will become clear about what you love the most about this church. Then you'll be ready to seek a minister whose values match yours. Over and over again, you'll be called to follow the pattern Brummett has laid out for us, the pattern for discerning the way forward. Begin by sincerely asking to know God's will for this church. Next, do the work. Bring in the candidates you're guided to bring in. Attend their tryouts. Reflect on what you've heard. Then participate in making the choice of the next minister, and then relax and surrender the outcome to Spirit. In this and every aspect of our lives, you and I are in partnership with the divine. At times, we are called to lead. At other times, we're called to follow. Now, it's important to realize that not all external changes are true new beginnings. It's essential to take whatever time we need to make wise decisions. See, the thing is, the void can be kind of uncomfortable. And it can be really tempting to leap into something new before we're internally ready. Especially if you're a person like me who is rather accustomed to feeling in control. It's easy to become impatient with the process and eager to get on with life, to act on the urging of our personal will alone, to make something happen. Well, you may think this feels a bit better than the not knowing that happens in the void, but it's not a true beginning. Brummett calls it a pseudo-beginning. A pseudo-beginning does not lead to a new life. It's recreating the old life in new form. Brummett uses an example that made me want to call him up and accuse him of meddling in my life. He talks about how a person can divorce his or her spouse and marry another person, yet have essentially the same relationship. Okay, show of hands. We could say it's the same dance with a different partner. A new beginning, on the other hand, is a totally new dance. But how can we tell a true new beginning from a pseudo beginning? Writer Ken Keyes helps us out here. He says we have to examine the nature of our desire to see if it's open, inclusive, and spacious, a divine idea rather than an addiction, which he defines as an emotionally charged demand or desire for something we think we must have to be happy and okay. All right, I'm going to read that again for you. Addiction is defined as an emotionally charged demand or desire for something we think we must have in order to be happy and okay. If our desire has this kind of unnatural urgency to it, best to slow way down before taking any action. If we think that any new beginning, new partner, new city, new job, new minister is going to make us happy, we need to think again. The truth we're not so comfortable looking at is that if we were unhappy in the void, chances are we're going to be just as unhappy in the new beginning. We need to make peace with the void, peace with the ending, peace with ourselves. The question to ask ourselves is, am I desperately trying to move away from something that feels bad, or am I moving forward along a life-affirming path? Right? Am I being pushed by a crisis or pulled by a vision? New beginnings come with their own set of challenges, needless to say. I'm going to pause on that. Here's the deal. New beginnings always require us to be new people. They require us to have grown in some way. And if we have not, they will push us into it. And we, human beings, have this tendency to resist personal inner change. I laughed when I read about the two ex-cons, Butch and Jack, who are adrift on a raft in the ocean. Things are looking pretty bad for these two. And finally, Jack, scared out of his wits, begins to pray very fervently. Oh Lord, I've broken all the commandments. I treat people like dirt. I curse, I steal, I drink. But if you'll spare my life, I promise I'll change. I'll be kinder to people. I'll stop cursing. And suddenly Butch cries out, Jack, Jack, I see a ship. Jack looks up to heaven and says, thanks so much, God. And let me get back to you on the stealing and the drinking. Sorry. Since we know that we create our reality from the inside out, what we create is totally about who we are. If stress in your body, my choice, or mental obsession lets you know that you are in resistance, pray for the willingness to surrender. If you've ever been in a 12-step program, you know the importance of that word willingness. Fillmore says, remember the golden key. Take your mind off the dilemma and put it on God. Read something uplifting. Come to a class at church. Call a unity friend. He says that to let go of resistance can only be done by refocusing on truth, on principle. Now, it takes courage to enter into a new beginning, and it takes commitment. As we know from our fifth principle, it's not enough to just daydream about what we want. We're going to be asked, you and I, to walk our talk, to be disciplined in doing our part, to make some sort of sacrifice. For example, a commitment to become a musician requires many hours of practice. Where's John, right? Even when you don't feel like doing it, right? But this is the true meaning of sacrifice, not the one we learned in the Catholic Church. The true meaning of sacrifice is the giving up of something good in order to create something better. Finding the right new minister for this church is going to require each of you to make that commitment. When the board asks you to participate in appreciative inquiry, show up. Make a commitment to participate to the best of your ability. When candidates are called, show up to hear them and let your voice be heard. When something's going on around here, and this is a big one, that you're not comfortable with, speak up. And I don't mean out in the parking lot. I mean in the middle of the meeting or to a board member. Your voice, congregation, is essential if you want this to remain your church. A true commitment is not an obligation to something or someone outside of ourselves. Every true commitment is to ourselves. I was thinking the other day that this process we're in is just a perfect time for us to refocus on the 4 agreements. Do you remember what they were? Be impeccable with your word. Take nothing personally. That's a big one. Take nothing personally. Make no assumptions. Check it out. Ask questions. And finally, do your best to help this church's dream become a reality. Now, there are a couple of other pitfalls ahead that I just feel like I want to mention because when they show up, I want you to know they're a normal part of the process. And one is facing the fear of failure. This feels so real to me right now. To risk again, to invest in something you believe in, even though there are large, unknown aspects to it. The minister search you're going to go through, the new life I'm starting, these are perfect practice fields where we could learn something essential for every aspect of our lives. That if we dare not risk failure, we can never commit to anything. If we dare not risk failure, we cannot commit to anything. And finally, Brummett says, there's one other personal hurdle we'll face in the process of new commitment, and that's fear of rejection. You must have noticed, anytime you take a stand for something, somebody's going to disagree with you. Making a commitment means being willing to stand in the face of criticism. We may find that some of our family, friends, colleagues, congregants do not support our ideas, our new beginning. They may even actively oppose us. In fact, here's something that a lot of you know, but I had to be reminded of. I was so relieved when I read this morning. I read this in the book yesterday, actually it was. In fact, people probably will oppose you and oppose your change if it appears that we are moving away from the family system they're comfortable with. I felt it in my own family. But here's a heads up for you. A word to the wise. A church congregation is a family system. You may not always agree on the way forward, but the challenge is this: can you be loyal and kind anyway? Returning once again to our Exodus story, we find that after many fierce battles, the children of Israel, led by Joshua, not Moses, remember, finally conquer the promised land. Joshua is a military leader, a warrior, a man of action, symbolizing these new aspects of consciousness we're going to need for a new beginning. The inner warrior. Strength, courage, discipline, and commitment. Both Joshua and Jesus must be our guides on this journey. Joshua represents the willingness and ability to take action. Jesus represents the spiritual principles that will guide us and balance us and make our actions effective. Life transitions can be evolutionary in nature. Life will never be the same again for any of us here, because through this process of transition, we have been changed. Moving from each stage, one to the other, we're learning to surrender the past, accept the present, be here now, just the way it is. And we're learning that to be in faith is to allow the future to unfold with grace and ease. Inherent in all of this is this trust factor. Trust in a divine plan that is always moving us to higher good. As our trust goes deeper and deeper, we're going to find out that the very force that shook our world and caused it to collapse around us, the force we resisted, then finally accepted, and have now come to embrace, is doing nothing less than bringing us home to ourselves. I can't remember who said this, but I prayed to God when the foundation of my life was being shaken, only to find that it was God who was shaking it. Absolutely. You all know the story of the Velveteen Rabbit? We're being made more real through this process. Many of our illusions about ourselves, our stories about other people, our ideas about how life is supposed to be are getting stripped away. The illusion that we are in control is hopelessly shattered. We're going to have to work at believing we're in control after this. And then through the wreckage, the light of reality shines through, so brilliant and so beautiful. The great meditation teacher Stephen Levine goes right to the heart of the matter. When you stop trying to control the universe, when you let go of everything, the only thing that remains is the truth, and truth will set you free. And so it is. God bless you.